There we go.
Alright, so we're going to start streaming in a second.
Actually, I'm going to minimize the Skype and pull up the stream. Hopefully, my dog doesn't start being an asshole.
Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to hide. I'm going to put you here so I can put the chat window. Yeah, I can put the chat window over here. Hello, Hunter. Yes, you are the only one here thus far. Um, hello,
I haven't even I haven't
Lickby.
even seen it live yet. Oh, there we
Yeah,
go.
there's always a little bit of a delay. So I'm just getting
Oh,
I Ryan had some technical difficulties. As you can see, he's got his camera. Hello, Erebus. So yeah, Ryan's got his cam. Now it's a little bit fucky tonight. Like I just kind of got it thrown together here. Um, hello, Shaman. So
I don't know. Live stream offline.
it shouldn't be offline. Well, there's people in there; they can see it.
Yeah,
Now I have to add.
it's lagging hardcore.
Now that might be your internet, but I'll get everyone else to tell me. Hang on, I'm just trying to get the chat back into the. How the fuck did I do this before?
Thanks,
Add
Erebus.
pop out chat. Here we go. Pop out chat. I'm gonna add that to our. Oh wait, it's already there. I think. Yeah, it is. It's already there. Perfect. Okay. All right then. All right. So yeah, tonight we're doing a I don't know if you guys remember. I'm just gonna do a quick recap of what this episode was. Now we did this a while back. We did an episode on the Desert Witch, and it was really cool. And after, oh wait, no, refresh of it still says offline. Can I ask you guys? Can you see us up in the stream? I can see us.
Yeah.
Are we good over here, guys? Are we online? Are we having technical difficulties?
I think that there's a extreme amount of lag coming from media, or maybe I just don't move too much.
Thank you so much, Jay Daviso, and yeah. Okay, so we're all good. We're here.
Korean, well, we got 13 people.
Okay, yeah, we could
Let's
start.
give it a minute.
So, so okay, let's do the intro first. I keep getting away from that because it's so weird how we start this. But anyway, hello everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Effed Up Stories. I am your host, Will Pender.
And I am your co-host, Ryan Sharp, in the
Oh,
flesh,
in the flesh,
in the
and
beard.
in the beard, the red beard, and kind of red up here too. You look very warm.
Um, no, I'll leave it down there. Yeah, it's warm in here,
All right. Anyway,
and I've been yelling at the dog all night.
cool. So anyway, yeah, we did a story a while back now on the Desert Witch, and it was a really cool story. And just to kind of give you a quick gist of what it was this guy Joseph and his wife were in Sedona, which was in the desert, and anyway, they his wife worked at a diner, and he would have to go and pick her up and stuff like that. And anyway, there was a strange little old lady that used to get people at the diner to go, like she'd ask for a ride or something like that, and then she'd get them to drive them out into the desert, and she did these really fucking weird rituals, which she said was meditation, but she was all kinds of fucked up. So like that's part one. That's the thing that we did before, and since then Joe has sent me like two more parts to that story, and tonight we're gonna go with part two. So that should be really cool. Hey Rob, and by the way, guys, I got a really cool submission from Rob Mason as well as another woman. That I don't know if we'll have time to cover it tonight, but we'll be covering it. So we got a couple new submissions to go through and a whole lot of old ones. But I will say this: we are burning through them faster than I thought we would. So, of course, to get more stories, people got to come across it. So if you guys want to just like spam forums and share it on Facebook, whatever, like just get that shit out there, because the more people that read it, the more stories that we get coming in, and that way we won't run out too soon, right? But anyway, hello to everybody that came in, all the new folks. I'm gonna start with part 2 here of the Desert Witch. Now, I will preface this by saying that I thought that my wife had, had actually edited this for me, because it was really fucking messy. And she did edit ones for me, but it wasn't this one. So, so this one is a mess. Like, I'm looking at it, there's like fucking weird spacing all over the place. There's paragraphs that go nowhere, and so what I'm basically saying is that you're gonna have to bear with me as I go through this. I was planning to come home and do a little bit on this, but when I came home, I had to take my son there while my wife did a couple things. So, with that said, and I will say this is going to be a long one. There's a lot here, but, cut me a little bit of slack if I start, like, going off in a weird spot.
I'm not ignoring people. I'm just trying to post the stream on
Facebook or something like
on
that.
Facebook there, yeah. I totally forgot about it while we were... Excellent. All right.
All right, guys. So yeah.
Keep losing audio. Why is it interrupted?
I don't know. I
wonder if it's the dual strain of how we're doing this.
That was my, if I had to guess, that's what I was going to say, is the fact that now we're streaming video here, and then I'm streaming it onto the internet. But is everybody having the problem, or is it just, a couple people?
Me too. Keep losing audio. Everything works fine.
All right. So
see, that's the tough thing with this stuff.
We'll just roll with it, and if it becomes like a big problem, then we'll decide how we're gonna do this. Anyway, so we're gonna go with Joseph's story, and see what.
And then I got a couple things I want to talk about.
All right.
That I think would be interesting, but yeah.
All right. So we'll start with this. And it's a long one, so we'll see where we are. Okay, so this is from Joseph. Before this entire incident took place, we had moved out of the RV and into a mini apartment. He's referring to the first story, right? So before the first story, they were living, in an RV, right? And his wife worked at the diner. Anyway, so before that, they were living in a mini apartment.
Here's something to try, Will. You don't need to be sending your video to me.
To you? Oh.
Yeah. I just figure I'm cutting down on bandwidth.
Hang on. How do I do that once I got it started? Oh, wait. All right. That should be good.
So hopefully that helps.
All right.
I mean, we are connecting to one another from across the country, and then...
All right. So anyway, so Joseph, before the part one of the where they were living in an RV and had that whole experience with the Desert Witch, they were living in a mini apartment. And being in a box truck in the middle of the desert in summer isn't the greatest, ideal situation, unless you like sleeping in an oven and dying of heat stroke, right?
Shit.
So he said it's super difficult to find a place for rent in Sedona. There is limited housing because the city is basically a half-mile long stretch in the middle of a national park surrounded by, natural parks and historic Native American cultural sites. You basically either have to luck out to find a place or know someone who is moving out, and you just take over their lease. And anyway, Joseph and his wife, they ended up moving into what the locals call a hacienda. Basically, it's a garage or shack the size of one car garage that's attached or just off of a main house. In Sedona, most people convert their garage or shed into one of these apartments and rent them out for extra cash. So, it's a really good, I could see that. You got not a lot of housing and stuff like that, so people rent their garages. So, most people make $800 a week during tourism season doing this. So a lot of people, is extra cash, they do it. So the hacienda or garage that they stayed in was in the middle of a 3 apartment strip off a main house. And the location was really nice. It was on top of a hill and completely hidden from all car and foot traffic, which is great. The backdrop was unbelievable. Well, I guess anywhere in Sedona, the views are unbelievable. It's easy to see why the First Nations people considered it a sacred place. And he said, speaking of First Nations people, the area in and around Sedona have some of the best preserved petroglyphs, which is, rock and cave art in the world. One character that repeatedly shows up in the rock paintings is a large lizard man, which is interesting because that's kind of what they tied the old woman to in the first one, was that she was a shape-shifting reptilian. But anyway, the park rangers will tell you that no one knows how to interpret the shapes or symbols in the rock art, and that they have been lost to time and antiquity. Funny thing is, if you're lucky enough to make friends with a native, whether a Hopi, Apache, Ute, or Dine, or Dine, he says the way it's pronounced.
Dene.
Dene, yeah. You will find that most of them, especially the elders, know exactly what the meanings are. One such story about a lizard man is that he was evil and would come with his giants out of a spiral in the sky to do terrible things to the people of the land, such as tear them apart and put them back together, or add body parts to them. Sometimes he'd eat them, or the giants would. Sometimes he'd take them away, and no one would ever see that person again. And they also said that they could open portals and travel in the world beyond ours. All of this, he found interesting, to say the least. And once he had the experience that he did, he started to consider things. He learned to see things differently. For example, in the Torah and the Talmud speaks the Nashash, which he says is a serpent or shining one. In the Garden of Eden, the tempter of man, in ancient texts from India, they speak of a creature known as the Naga, or serpent people. And in Asian countries, they speak of their kings being the offspring of dragon fornicating with women. And in South America, you have the winged serpent Quetzalcoatl, Quetzalcoatl, the Wajit in Egypt, the rainbow serpents of Tibet, Vikings and a serpent. The list of endless, even in the New Testament. Jesus addresses the corrupt leaders of the Jewish synagogue church at the time, calling them a brood of vipers and seeds of their father, the devil. And Joseph began to wonder if they were actually snake people, and Jesus knew it and called them out on it. All over the internet, you hear of these conspiracies that the leaders of the world are these reptilian people. For example, David Icke. It's also odd that in Brishit, the book of Genesis, or however you pronounce that, God is speaking to the serpent and curses him, saying he will from now on crawl on his belly, eating the dust of the earth, and that he would be the enemy with man. You will bruise his heel, and he will crush your head. Enmity is a brutal word when you look it up. Enmity is resentment, rancor, indignation, grudge, spite, sulliness, sourness, churlishness, moroseness, petulance, peevishness, acrimony, hostility, malice, virulence. It's a whole lot of bad. This just goes on. It's bad stuff. A better translation of the scripture in Hebrew would read as follows: because of that you have done the shinning one, serpent of old. You will lose the ability to travel as you are used to, flying. Maybe there's too many thoughts here. I want to get back to the story. Hang on. Like I said, there's it's hard to keep this stuff when it's not edited. And I apologize. I thought my wife did. Anyway,
but needless to say that throughout the world, throughout time, throughout history, civilizations and cultures the world over have included serpents in their mythology and their culture and their stories.
Yes.
In one shape or another, every religion, every sect, every cult, somebody believes in some sort of serpent or reptile people.
Exactly. So anyway, getting back to his story. It actually has a part here that says anyways, so I'm hoping we're back on track here. Back to the events that took place after this encounter with the little old lady. Now, this is the little old lady from the first, the first story, the little shape-shifting witch. And like Joseph said, they were renting the middle studio, which, was basically a garage of some sort in a sandwich between a 3-studio apartment strip, kind of in a secluded area just outside the heart of Sedona. And he said the apartment to our right came up for rent. And, they were sad to see their neighbors leave. They were a couple of med students and they had just graduated, from college. So their apartment was up for rent. And Joseph's landlord decided to rent it out on a week-to-week basis since the tourism season was beginning over the next few months, random people would stay in this apartment. And the list of characters that went there, he just rhymes off different kinds of guys. They had hippies, some fat Eurotrash guy who was never really there, some weed-smoking Native American named Something Thunder that claimed he could contact aliens with a laser pointer at night, and was more than happy to hang out and talk about star people and quantum physics. That guy was weird but fun to listen to, apparently. Then came the rotating groups of mountain bikers. Sedona is a mountain biker's wet dream, apparently. After the bikers there were, a few old couples, random foreign tourists probably. A few months went by with no permanent renter, no problems either. And then one day, Joseph came home. And as he was walking up to his apartment, and guess who comes out of the apartment next to ours? He's like, yeah, the old lizard face. So this is the old woman. Okay, now it's getting interesting to me. So the little old lady took it up. Anyway, Joseph said he just about shit his pants. He said that she looks at him, smiles, walks down the driveway to the road to hitch a ride. And that's what she does, right? She hitches rides. Anyway, watch part 1 for that. She walks down to hitch a ride, and he immediately goes and knocks on his landlord's door. And the landlord answers, and he's like, hey, man, what's up with the little old lady in apartment 3? And he says her name, and it's like, oh, she rents the place about once every few years anytime it opens up for rent. Stays for a while and then disappears. She doesn't say much, but she pays on time. Why do you ask? And Joseph told him, he's like, man, I was wondering, and walked back to my place. About a week goes by. We didn't see her that much. She'd leave in the morning, usually while we were at work. They'd return or, see, this is what I'm talking about. There's no edits. It's just anyway, like I said, bear with me. He told him why, okay, I guess, and he was wondering why she stayed there. And then he walked back to his place. So moving forward, at about a week after that goes by, Joseph and his wife didn't see the little old lady very much. She'd leave in the morning, usually while they were at work, and return after 11 p.m. And most of the time, she didn't even come home, or, they didn't hear her come home. He said the apartments were so close to each other that their bedroom wall was her bedroom wall on the other side. If people were talking, you could hear a low mumbling through the walls. If you farted in your apartment, you'd hear a giggle or a that's gross from the other apartment. And if
my brother lives in a place like that. We listen to his landlord's fucking shit himself all the time. It's just like a leather couch.
Anyway, and if someone came home to that apartment, you could hear them unlock the door, open it, and go inside. And they had a day off of work at one point. He said it was about 100 degrees outside. And so Joseph decided to go home and take a nap. They had their swamp cooler on so they could be nice and cool inside the apartment. And he said, a swamp cooler is basically the desert version of a air conditioner, right? It works by cooling water and sending air over the cooled water to turn it into cold air and blows it through the house. That's how we understood it. Anyway, just a side note for anyone submitting stories, because this is a whole paragraph about how they work right here. That's not important to this story. This is something that I would have edited out. Anyway, so he has his AC unit. Suddenly, this weird feeling comes over Joseph, and in the area where his third eye is. And he said it started to pulse, right? He said it literally felt like someone was taking an ice cold finger and tapping his forehead right between his eyes. And he said he was laying there, eyes closed, and he just became super tired. He was exhausted. And he's trying to open his eyes, but he's having trouble opening them. And they keep closing, and it's becoming a struggle. It's taking everything in him to fight the sleep that's just coming over him. And just trying to get his body to stay awake is a real struggle. And suddenly, in his mind's eye, he sees this old lady, this old desert witch. He said it's like his eyes are closed and it's blackness, like, when most people close their eyes. And just above his normal line of sight, there's this fuzzy image of her, and it just starts to appear almost like she was made of smoke, like she was coming out of a smoky vortex or mini tornado. And he said his whole body became paralyzed. And he knew it was whatever this lizard lady was doing. And he said in his head, he yelled at her. He told her no, that she would not be allowed to do this, that she wasn't allowed in his head. And he couldn't speak out loud, with his mouth. So, mentally, he was yelling these words all the while her image is getting closer and closer. And his third eye is like thumping. And he begins to pray in Hebrew. And it literally becomes this mental tug of war. Joseph would pray in his head, and she would start to fade away and get smaller. And then she'd start to come back as soon as he would stop. And he'd almost fall asleep. And this, he said that this continued to happen for 30 to 45 minutes. And finally, Joseph was exhausted. So he cried out to God and he asked for protection. He even threw in the name of Jesus like his mom taught him to do when he was a child. And suddenly she disappeared in his head. But the smoke was still there. And the cold thumping continued. It seemed to be slowing down, but at this point he either fell asleep or passed out. And when he woke up, it was around 4 or 5 p.m. He had no idea of what happened. He was pretty worn out, but felt right when he awoke. He had hired a guy to be in his cooking staff when he was in Sedona, so he became good friends with this guy, and he learned later on that his mother actually was part of this scientific study done at Berkeley and Stanford in the 60s and 70s on psychic research, the same group that he believes the Indigo Swan was involved with. And she later went on to a tech class of psychic activation techniques.
Ingo Swan.
Ingo, is that what it is?
Yeah, Ingo
I thought
Swan.
that was a typo.
That's a guy. He created
Swans? No, I'm just fucking with you.
Remote viewing. Pretty much. He ran the remote viewing program for a while, I do believe.
All right. So he had claimed, the Ingo guy, that he had claimed that she told him a good number of her students were military for a while. One night, Joseph and his friend Mike, I guess that's who he was referring to, were swapping weird tales because he was into all this same old weird shit, that he had told him about his mom and all this stuff, and a few of his astral projection experiences. So he told him about this weird experience that he had with, his little weird third eye nap battle with the lizard lady. And his friend Mike gave him this worried look and said, man, that's not good at all. And Joseph figured as much. But anyway, his friend went on to explain that what he thought she was doing. And he said one of the techniques that some psychics use when doing one-on work for readings or spiritual healing is to ask the person, they are having a session with, to chord with them. And Joseph had no idea what that meant, but according to Mike, no pun intended, chording is when a psychic uses their third eye to go into another person's spirit body and attach to that individual's third eye.
I've never heard of that.
I've never heard of it either, so it's interesting. See where it goes. He said that usually this comes about when both parties in the session agree to this technique. The psychic would enter the person's head with an image of him or her holding a rose or another object, maybe a scroll or something, as a gift or a symbol, and the other person would receive the gift signifying that they are agreeing to this psychic connection. He said, it's called cording because in the spirit realm, it looks like a silver cord coming out of the middle of one person's head. And, we've talked about that before. Like anybody who has astral projection, right, or out-of-body experiences, you have this thin cord that apparently comes out of the center of your head that connects you to your body. And if that cord should ever get cut, well, then you die, right?
Yeah. And Andrew just started talking about reptilian part of the brain, our survival center. Ryan moving into enlightenment. That's what the serpent represents. Yeah, there's a whole thing with that, with the Kundalini, or however you pronounce it. That's what the pharaoh headdress supposedly represented, was the serpent coming out and of the crown chakra and resting upon the third eye chakra. And that your Kundalini is this, coiled up cord of energy at the base of your spine. Yeah, and that through the meditation process, you rise it up through you and weave it through your different chakra points until you reach
Godhead.
Exactly.
Right. So now we're talking about this lizard lady connecting to his third eye. That's pretty fucked up. Okay. So, anyway, he said it's called cording because of that, right? And he said, however, the cord doesn't have to be silver. It can be a variety of colors. And that's new to me. Most people wouldn't see anything. They would maybe feel something. It would feel like static electricity or a cooling sensation just above the eyes and right between them. And then the psychic could access the spiritual side of a person and tap into whatever the problem might be or whatever that person wanted to see or know. And afterward, the person would mentally give the rose or gift or symbolic object back so that they could agree to undo the connection, ending the cording. So I see how that works, right? You meet up, you're going to do a cording, you give them a gift or whatever, something that means something to them. They can use that to, go inside, make that connection to your third eye, and at the end of the session you give it back, thus signifying ending the connection. So anyway, he said this kind of technique is rare and most people don't use it, and it's a very intimate thing, like Avatar. Right? But anyway, he says it's a very intimate thing, and also you have to be a well-seasoned psychic to even be able to do this. He said what he thinks she was doing was trying to forcibly cord with him to control or see through him, or even plant a spiritual sickness to him, possibly to eventually hurt or kill him, which is pretty freaky. And he said also she then, if she wanted to, would be able to find him anytime while she was in her astral body. So he couldn't hide, right? There was no hiding. There's nowhere in the world he could hide. And also...
Well, and you got a crazy little bitch in your head.
Oh yeah, well, a lizard lady at that, right? So he said, his friend told him that you can do this in other ways than astrally. You don't always even need the cording connection. You can use a spirit to find a person or command a spirit to shadow a person, so you always know where they are. And he said he didn't know what she was doing, but obviously this wasn't good, right? So this was all bad news. And, he was basically, Joseph told him that he already had it figured out. Like, he knew that it had to do with this lady. And he then went on to explain to him, the first interaction that he had with her. And his friend just kept telling him to, be careful, stay pure, and try to avoid her. And Joseph thought to himself, well, that's going to be a little hard to do since she now has strategically made herself his neighbor. I mean, that's already weird, right? Even just the neighbor part. And he said it's interesting to note that although the old lady didn't return to the cafe while, Joseph and his wife were living in Sedona, they later found out that she had sent out two of her witch buddies from her coven. She was a crone in a coven of three, and they could be seen all over Sedona and Cottonwood in a small nearby town. And he said that the witch and her crones would be seen all over, a three-town area basically. And the other two also had a distinct look to them, and they always wore pretty much the same outfits every day.
That's the requirement for coven, isn't it? Three witches.
Yeah.
Very Macbeth.
Yeah.
Bubble, bubble, toil and trouble.
There you go. And he said the lizard lady would wear her blue church suit. Ironic, hey, church suit. And and then one of the crones from her, these are older women, 60s, 70s, would be dressed in what looked like some sort of flower scarf, a moo that, he said that she was a rather large woman. And he can't really remember ever seeing her get out of her motorized wheelchair. The last one looked about 60 to 70 and wore a flowered sundress and a goofy flower sun hat. Sometimes she wouldn't wear a hat and she would walk onto people's property and just sit on their porch or in their backyard, mumbling till you kicked her out. She played stupid when people asked her what she was doing on their land, and usually she'd say something like, "You have a beautiful home," or a dog, or a chair, and she would just repeat that until about the fourth or fifth time that she was asked to leave or just, get the fuck out. And a friend of Joseph's had a run-in with her when she wandered onto, her property in Cottonwood, Arizona. And at the time, they just thought she was crazy. But his friend called him later that night very upset, saying that a shadow person was in her home that night, and her dogs had woken up barking at the bedroom door. She grabbed her gun, let the dogs out, and that's when
Oh, Will, hang on. Look, somebody has to go pee. I'm only kidding.
Just go in your pants, man. That could
I'm
be
sorry.
an effed up story. We entice someone to wet their pants. No, but anyway, what was I saying?
I see you too, Mary.
What was I saying?
You were talking about guns and stuff.
All right. It's just that I got a wall of text here, so like when I find myself back, it's a little bit hard.
I'm sorry. It was funny, and I had to.
All right. So anyway, there's this lady, phones Joseph later. This is his friend, right? Had this run-in with this weird lady on his lawn. One of these crones, right? And then later that night, she calls him all freaked out because, she saw a shadow person on her home. The dogs were barking, at the bedroom door. She grabbed her gun. She let the dogs out. And that's when she saw a shadow man that ran across her yard. And later on, after discussing this with her, Joseph and his friend made the connection that, the lady that was there earlier, the crazy old crone that was in her yard, might have been the root to this. She might have been the one that caused this to happen on her property. And it was later assumed that they were a coven of three, reminding him of the legend of the three old crones, right? So, he says here, if you ever read the crones throughout history, they seemingly always associate with evil, wicked works, or trickster type hauntings, or black magic workings. The fat
They were
one,
even in The Witcher.
They were in The Witcher. That was a great part, actually. So typically they are, you have the fat one in the motorized wheelchair. In his case, right? She'd gotten into the cafe a few times, so they got rid of the wheelchair. I'm just joking. But you had her, the fat one. You had a few times after that, and I don't mean to use that term, by the way. That's what he has written, so no one criticize me for saying that. But anyway, she and her friend were kicked out for basically yelling nonsense at people, and it was almost like the lizard lady was the only one that could keep it together. The other ladies would break up. They couldn't stay normal long enough. They'd start freaking out at people or saying weird shit, or they couldn't keep the persona of a normal human being long enough to stay anywhere. They get kicked out. Whereas the little old lady, the lizard lady, was able to, pass it off
Blend
a lot
in
better.
little better.
Right? So
she was more of a chameleon lady.
She was more of a chameleon lady. So, she acted the most normal. He said the wheelchair lady would mostly be seen driving around grocery stores all day long. He said it's as if they were they were all on these different assignments to do things at different locations, right? Like they were the ones in charge of some kind of spiritual circuit in that region, and they patrolled it well. And it made him wonder if that's the case everywhere, and only the fact that it was such a small town in a remote location that it was easy for him to see and pick up on, right? And they said then again in Sedona, witches, wizards, and all the rest can be found in a mass quantity doing, who knows what, right? He said there's more crystal shops and stop shaman stores in that little strip of desert than anywhere else he's ever been. Easily 20 or more, all in a 1/4 to 1/2 mile radius, all selling the same crap. He said it makes no sense to him how they all stay open, except maybe by magic. He said there's even a Buddhist group there, and he said, for real, a real category of cult, self-help, fringe, and religion thing that you can imagine. It's all there, and it's thriving. He said even Walt Disney had a home there next to Thunder Mountain, which is why there's a Thunder Mountain at Disneyland. He said they call it Thunder Mountain in Sedona because every time thunder booms, the sound ricochets off the mountains and shakes the town. It's actually pretty neat. So back to his story here, he said she never tried to get into his head again. At least not that he's aware of, but he didn't see her. He basically saw her maybe once a week or so after that. But that was just the start of things getting weird. This is a big story, I'm telling you. So just about every night at around the same time each night, they would hear what sounded like someone falling onto the roof right above their bed. And then run across the roof towards the main house. And then later on, before dawn, you would hear what sounded like someone run back and jump, but not on land. You would hear them jump, but you wouldn't hear them land. That's what he's trying to say here. He said the only thing that he could picture in his head was a hole or a door opening, floating above the roof and something jumping out. It would, or sometimes something landing on the roof, running around, doing its thing, and then comes back and jumps back into the portal or door and disappears into the next night. And he said that wasn't the only thing that happened. He said dreams were really weird around that time. They were almost, they seemed too real, right? He said he's not sure if he left his body and was seeing a spirit realm, but strange dreams would happen a lot, and they were like, sometimes he'd shut his eyes, and it was like he was in a remote view, from a different perspective he'd never seen before. He had no control on how or why when it would happen. It was just random. And it was like being inside a TV and looking out into random people's places. He said it made no sense, but it was kind of neat. So it was almost like, as if he somehow was, someone else is doing a remote viewing and he just like hitched aboard, right? He's a spectator. I guess that's the way he's describing it. So he said that his bed, the bed touched the wall on the left side of the length of the bed was touching the wall. And he said that the lady's bed, on the other side of, the crazy lizard lady, her bed was on the other side of that wall to the apartments. They were separated by this wall, right? And anyway, he said he had moved their bed after they had this, that weird third eye connection thing that freaked him out, so that their heads weren't going to be resting against the same wall as her head would have been, in her apartment, his on his. He figured that, that's not a good...
He moved his bed to an inside wall.
Yeah, he didn't want to be connected to her or any closer than he had to be. And he said no matter how he arranged, or, they arranged the room, him and his wife, the one room, no matter how many... I'm fucked all up here. No matter how they arranged the room, one side of the bed had to touch her wall. Okay, so no matter how they moved the bed, part of that bed had to touch this lady's wall, okay? So Joseph made it so that their heads would rest against the French doors that opened to a backyard, and only one side of the bed would touch the wall. And he basically slept against that wall most of the time so that his wife wouldn't have to. And after a while, his wife decided that she wanted to sleep against the wall because she was a little weirded out about sleeping with her head against a glass door. I could see that. It's kind of weird sleeping my head against this fucking glass door. Anyway, so Joseph said fine. They switched. They fall asleep. Now his wife is there, right? And they're sleeping, and he started to dream about him sleeping exactly how he was actually sleeping physically in that room. So he's dreaming of himself doing what he's doing. And he said in his dream, he opened his eyes, and the French doors, by his bed that led outside to the backyard were wide open. And then suddenly he noticed this weird black oil-like creature. He said it was probably 6 to 7 feet tall, very thin, and anemic looking. He could see bone structure under what looked like wet, shiny skin. Literally like it was dipped in black oil, but not dripping. He said this creature walked in front of him and all the way to the other side of the room, to a couch that they had under a large window that led into the front yard. The front yard was surrounded by 5 to 6 foot tall stone wall with a double wooden door that led out to the driveway. And he said basically like a Spanish vista. That was the design of their place. And anyway, this creature made its way to the window, and it opened, it opened the window. It stood on the couch, and like a spider with 4 legs creepily climbed halfway out. And as it was about to duck its head through and finish crawling out, it turned to face Joseph. He said its face was round with a short jaw. Where a nose would be, it kind of looked like it had rotted off. It had 2 tiny black horns on each side of its head. Looked like a black marble cut in a very low, very low profile. And he said it suddenly grinned at him. Its grin was huge. It looked like someone had slit the edges of its mouth to its ears with a knife. I guess like the Joker, right?
You want to know how I got these scars?
Well, he was a blabbermouth. Anyway, he said it looked, it had what looked like layers of sharp teeth, and then it spoke. And he said he don't know what it was, if it was a different language or what, but he said it said one long word. And I can't pronounce some real English words, and this isn't English, so I'm just gonna,
Here, post it to me and let me try.
Okay, but I'm still gonna try for the,
Yeah.
All right. So he has it as Schlangua. Schlangua. All right, I'm gonna still post this to you in Skype though. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Actually, fuck, I should put it in the chat room. Everyone else should see it too.
Yeah, post it there.
There you go. That's how he has it. So you want to try, Chief?
Oh yeah.
You see my problem, right? All right. I see a little bit of H.P. Lovecraft influence coming across.
Yeah.
And
some Shub-Niggurath or, Cthulhu.
all right. Anyway, it's some weird fucking thing. And it said something weird like that. And he said it was really like a loud whisper as he was saying it in the dream. As it was saying it in his dream, he actually heard it audibly in his physical ear. It woke him up. He actually heard it in his physical ear, and he felt its warm breath on his face.
Oh, gross.
Yeah, gross. He said his eyes were still shut, but he was awake. And he said then he saw a shadow move in front of him with its eyes. He had his eyes closed, but he could perceive this shadow walk in front of him. And he says what he means by this is best to explain that, you close your eyes in a lighted room and you pass your hand in front of your face and you will see a shadow through your closed eyes. And he said that's what he saw with his eyes shut as he heard this voice. And when he saw the shadow, it startled him because he could feel, he could still feel that his wife was in bed next to him, which meant something was actually in the room. And he quickly opened his eyes and looked towards the window and saw nothing. He said the window, however, was opened as well as the French doors, just like in his dream. And he said it sounded like someone actually walked through the front yard. And he said, now, sounds at night in the yard could be another person from an apartment or the landlords or a javelina. And he says a javelina or javelina is a wild pig that is actually part of the rodent family. There's thousands of them across the southwest in northern Arizona and Sedona. But anyway, he said they're practically blind and only come out at night, and they have these tusks like a wild boar, and they can seriously hurt you. And again, like there's too much detail here about the pigs. Right? Anyway.
Zoological fucking study.
Well, see, that's what throws me off. It's like I'm getting into the story, then I walk into this encyclopedic, description of like this wild animal that really don't matter to this. Anyway, so he woke up his wife. He locked the door, shut the window, and they saged the house, right? You take that sage and you burn it around your house until they felt better. It's called smudging, right? And they were smudging the house, and this became a nightly ritual. And for the most part, it seemed to keep away the darker things, right? And like shadow people would, never show up when they saged, and the weird oily thing wouldn't come back either. But he said it was weird to him how it could be in his dream and yet somehow in his room at the same time. This whole experience that he dreamt it while it was happening. Like he was remote viewing his own room. And then again, he said maybe it only projected into his mind what it wanted him to think it was doing and look like, since he didn't really physically see anything other than a shadow with his eyes. And, he closed and heard the sound of its voice, right? Or I should say, he saw the shadow with his eyes closed and heard the sound of this thing's voice. So anyway, the other thing about it that was odd was that the voice was actually harmonic when it said that word. Like more than one thing spoke at the same time. Like it had a musical quality. And any musician knows what, you mean by harmony. Actually, most people probably know. People sing two notes. And
sing us a harmony, Will. Do two notes at once.
I'd have to be possessed to do that. Right? But you get what I'm saying, right? You got like, the one note wants to go to the fifth, whatever. So it's that kind of thing. It had a musical quality, and it sounded like there was two voices. At least two voices, right? So he said he never heard it again, whatever it was, but they had continued problems with the French doors. He said that they would open by themselves all the time, and, it got to the point that they started locking all the locks on the door. He thinks that there were 3. And that sometimes stopped doors from opening, and sometimes it didn't. And he said he began to get paranoid, and he would lock the bedroom door as well. And just the idea of having some creature enter his room again while he was sleeping, just made his stomach turn. And he had a 9mm handgun, he had a 40 cal handgun, and an AR-15 rifle, and a 30-30 Winchester. But what would that do against some kind of creature like a skinwalker, right? Or some kind of shadow creature or something like that. Other than, it could pass through them. It could pass through the walls. I mean, he doesn't know what he's dealing with, but, he has heard stories on the reservation through people that, some skinwalkers who had been shot, later on they would find a person that had died from a gunshot wound, right? But anyway, usually once or twice a night, the door handle would jiggle. But that could have been the wind. He tries not to think about it. And he said on 3 separate occasions, he heard a Native American flute being played outside past his backyard. And he also heard a sharp, loud whistle a few times. But of these, both of these, he said, are bad news, and usually it's a skinwalker trying to get you to come outside, lure you outside so it can do what it wants to do. He said the sharp, loud whistle could be a skinwalker or it could be a Bigfoot. The hairy guys were seen in a few places in and around Sedona. And he said some folks, they even had an albino at one of these locations known as Bradshaw Ranch. And he said apparently this place is as weird as, or in some ways weirder than Skinwalker Ranch. So I'm going to have to Google that myself. Anyway, so like these weird sounds and stuff like that would happen. And Joseph found himself getting dragged out there one night. And he said, this is a whole other story. But he said he'll share that if we're interested. He got a bunch of strange pictures and, try not to. He'll try to get it on his computer and get it sent to us. But anyway, he said the strange things are not limited to his apartment. He said, he seemed, after this experience, he seemed to have been open up to the spirit world, and Sedona is full of strange things. He said one night at a work party at his boss's house, he went out on his deck to get some fresh air. It was dark, it was probably 9 to 10 p.m., and Sedona is unique because it has, this light ordinance. They have no light pollution law. That's actually pretty cool. He said basically they have a limited number of street lights, and the ones that they do have are on like this low glow, right? As to prevent light pollution. He said there are no side street lights. Everyone's block is basically pitch black. They do this so that you can see the stars perfectly at night, and that's the first thing I thought of because it's great for stargazing, right? And he said that the Southeast has one of the most beautiful night skies he's ever seen. It's no wonder that some of the best telescopes in the world are located in Arizona. So he's on this porch, he's looking up, and he's checking out the stars over the roof, and he sees, this black sheet fly over, and it literally looked like a black bed sheet gliding across the roof edge over the porch light. He said it was right above him, about 30 feet in the air. And he said it flew across the field about 100 yards in a tree line, and right when he thought it was over and was about to get tangled in the tree branches, it stopped, hovered above the tree, took the shape of what looked like a pole wearing a bed sheet, put some kind of lag down on a branch, that's really bizarre, and stood on top of the tree for about 10 seconds, and then shot up about 10 feet, jump glided to another tree a block away, and then Joseph lost sight of it. That's really fucking weird, hey? He said not a clue of what, he thinks it was, but shortly after that, he was walking home with his friend, and he was on the phone with his wife, and she was out of town. They were saying their good nights, and suddenly the air got all ozony. That's what he said. He said it smelled like burned electrical. I get what he's saying there. And he said his call just dropped. And, he called back. He had full bars. And as soon as his wife would answer the phone, it would drop the call. And this went on for like 5 minutes. And then he got this weird idea to take pictures, like, on the ghost hunting shows, right? And so he starts taking these pictures at random, just randomly, to see if, he can pick up what might be around him, or what might be interfering with his phone calls. And he said his friend and himself, they started flashing these pics above their heads and at random around them. And, he's on his phone, his friend's on his, and every picture that they take, that they took has these bright dots all over the place. And, at first he's thinking, it's dust, right? His phone pics are showing nothing. And then he tries to make this call to his wife again, and, she picks up the phone, full bars, and drops the call again. So he's getting frustrated, right? He's angry. Nothing shows up on his pictures. Nothing's on his friends, except for one shot. He said, in the picture on his phone is what looks like a skull on top of a long snake thing floating in the air made out of smoke. And his buddy says, fuck that dude. That's fucked up. And he's,
that sounds like a naga.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And he said it was really creepy, right? And he said he later found out that Sedona has this mini NSA attached to their police department. They can force drop all the calls in the area. They can pick up every phone conversation in the area. Even record people talking without an electrical device if they are in the right location. So, they were only a few blocks away from the police station. And, he said it very well could have been a test that they were doing that caused some kind of electric magnetic anomaly that messed with his pictures and dropped his calls. And he felt kind of dumb yelling at the sky when he found that out, right? Motherfucker! Right? I guess it's a logical explanation. So
it's one of the four corner states, I believe Sedona's in, Sedona, New Mexico, right?
Right. One of the four.
So it's one of the four corner states, one of the most surveilled and federally watched and owned land,
And one of the areas that if we lived, we'd be on TV right now.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
He said the buildings that that they used were owned by a cult leader known as Gabriel of Sedona. And he's got a note here. It says, look him up on YouTube. So do that if you want, everybody. Look him up on YouTube. Who knows what went as far as rituals and stuff like that. And on the property, some of his co-workers had creepy things happen while working the shift in the house. The house was one huge floor in the shape of a T. There were 9 to 10 rooms for clients and, an open kitchen pool and a rec room. And people would report hearing laughter and sex sounds coming from the attic randomly at night. I guess I should feel bad for the guys.
Sedona is Arizona. My bad.
All right. Anyway, he said what was creepy about the sounds was of the singing that would slowly move through the length of the building some nights. Like, someone walking the halls, but no one would be there. You'd hear it go right past you as if someone was singing as they walked by. And he said one night the overnight staff member fell asleep and he was laying on the floor next to his desk. And he said when he got up to do the hourly room checks, something odd happened. He said, he had checked on all the clients and he was heading back to his desk to do the paperwork when he saw a body laying on the floor next to his desk. And he said he freaked out because no one, should have been out of their rooms. And he said besides that, he just checked in, on everybody in the rehab. And he said as he got closer to the body, he realized it was his body. Yeah. And he said he thought, he said he thought he might have died somehow. He was terrified. So he ended up doing the only thing he could think of to do. He said he laid himself inside his body and tried to lay perfectly lined up with it, hoping that he'd, reconnect with his body. And he said once he got his pinky perfect on one of his hands, he could move his real physical pinky. And then slowly he merged back into his body. He said he was so scared, and this entire process of lining himself back up took about 30 minutes. And he said about a week after that, the same guy was working and fell asleep again. And when he woke up, his shirt was open and he felt burning on his chest. And as he got up and looked into the mirror, he saw these strange symbols scratched into his chest. They didn't make any sense, but did resemble symbols of some kind. And he said, he just quit that job right after that. They had a native guy who also worked the nights, and he said he ended up quitting after a few weeks. He started to he said he kept seeing people come up to the sliding doors at night and press their face against them, and look at him, and then they would disappear. And one of the weird things that Joseph found out about Sedona and the surrounding areas was that the Prescott Valley had massive amounts of gold, silver, and copper, iron, and Magnus something. Basically, Sedona and the surrounding areas are sitting on a gigantic, naturally made battery. And Joseph thinks that's why all these entities travel through the area and all the anomalies take place in the four corners, the four corner areas. Why the military has such a high interest in the land and why people see such crazy stuff. It's free energy. And it makes him think of Jacob's Ladder, which, by the way, I will say this. I love that fucking movie. Anyone who didn't see Jacob's Ladder, watch it. Anyway.
It is a fantastic film.
It's a fantastic film. And so Joseph said it's kind of like Jacob's Ladder where angel spirits, crafts, creatures, and entities can travel to and from between worlds or dimensions. And he said, it's just a thought that he has, but he thinks there are a few places like this in the world where the energy is different and the veil is thin. Now, I've heard that before, several different places. That is a line that you will see oftentimes associated with the ley lines, right?
The veil is thin here. There's a natural portal.
There's a natural,
this is where that kind of stuff.
Right. So, I do have more here. Like, I just...
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? Like, there's.
Well, I mean, let's just talk a little bit. I mean, we're an hour into this guy's story here.
I told you it was a whopper.
We've covered a lot of material. So, I mean, first off with the reptilians, right? I had a little conversation in chat. I don't know if everybody got it.
Can I ask you something before you start?
Yeah, go.
I'm almost afraid because I couldn't watch the chat and read this, right? Like, I can almost see, like, oh my god, this fucking thing keeps going. It's going here. It's going. What the fuck are they talking? Like, I just, again, that is the. That's why I haven't had time to edit a lot of these things. Is because they're just, some of these things are really lengthy. They're all over the place, and that's it, man.
Well,
By the
that's
seat
the
of my
problem,
pants.
right? Like it's great. It's great that people want to share their stories, but sometimes when people sit down to write this stuff, it turns into a rambling fucking mess. Now, I'm not going to say this is a rambling mess. I mean, it's a long story. There's a lot of material.
There's
I've
like a
seen
quarter
people.
left. There's a quarter of what I read left.
Okay.
And there's a
Well,
part 3. Anyway, go on.
Let's touch upon some of the stuff that we've covered so far. So he's living in a place now where suddenly this reptile lady, right? This woman who he's seen change into a reptile, um, is moved in next door. Now, there's been some conversation in chat as to the nature of reptilians, and I mean, just going off of shit. What was that Dulce whistleblower? What was his name?
Yeah, I'm the one to ask. I like forget my
Yeah,
name every day.
yeah, I know. It escapes me at the moment. It'll come to me in a minute. Anyway, Dulce, New Mexico, some guy came out and, started talking about reptilians and the extraterrestrial war and all this stuff. Phil Schneider. There we go. I knew it would creep up on me. Sorry, I know that the video is going to look a little bit weird here because I'm leaning forward towards the mic. Can you hear me fine when I'm sitting back here?
Yeah.
Okay, well, then I'll quit fucking leaning forward. So Phil Schneider came out and gave us this wealth of information about reptilians. And, I mean, more or less, according to him, we have a situation where a group of extraterrestrials have landed on Earth. They've been here for a long time. They've set up shop. They secretly pull the strings behind the scene. And there's a very stringent hierarchy. One that includes a worker class, I think a warrior class, I believe a scientist class as well. A thinker class, a ruling class or an administrative class, and then a royal class, the true ruling class. So between all there's some differences, some physiological differences from one of these types of reptilians to the other, where to the point where I've seen comments being made that perhaps the Jersey Devil was a royal, right? Large with huge wings and bipedal reptilian humanoid. Now, if that is the kind of thing that we're dealing with here, this story definitely adds an interesting element because it adds a lot of metaphysicalness to it. And when we start talking about metaphysical, it doesn't necessarily mean like Dungeons and Dragons level of fucking magic and spells and shit like that. There's a whole lot of weird stuff in regular understood physics, right? Quantum entanglement, it was called by Einstein spooky action at a distance because it seemed to defy the normal laws of physics. And if the quantum mechanics that we're discovering now, you can hear my dog. You hear my dog with his toy in the background. Ragnar, quit it. You little shit. No, I got his attention now. He's coming over. So if you have a race of beings, extraterrestrials, reptilians, whatever you want to call them, that have a greater level of technology than we have, then, I mean, you have to accept that maybe some of this really weird physics that we're just kind of discovering now and have been discovering for like the last 20 years, 30 years or whatever. Well, no, it's been longer than that since Einstein. But that's really been, getting traction over the last few decades. Then if you extrapolate that out and think, well, if we had another 50 years, if we had another 100 years to work on that stuff, then where would we be, right? What kind of weird mind to mind technology will we have access to? What kind of weird teleportation and all that other crazy shit will we have to work with, right? Um, I don't know. I don't know if it goes anywhere, but if we, at some point, if we just say accept the story for what it is, and think about the possible implications of where something as weird as quantum mechanics, that level of understand, if we understood quantum mechanics in the same way that we understood fucking chemistry, where we can take hydrogen, which we use as a jet fuel, and oxygen that we use as a jet fuel, and then stick them together, then we can make stuff that we fucking breathe, right? Or that we can drink, or we can take the stuff that we drink and pull the oxygen off and breathe it instead. Um, if we understood quantum mechanics to that degree, then imagine what this world could be like, right? It would look like fucking wizards everywhere, kind of thing. The technology would just be off the charts.
Well, one thing I want to do, and I always, I do this whenever we do a big story, and I kind of want to sum up, make it a neat little package of what happened here, especially for everybody who came in a little late or whatever. So this is part 2 of the Desert Witch. We had a part 1 that we put up like over a year ago, and essentially what it was in the beginning was this guy Joseph and his wife, and they had moved to Sedona, and they were living in a trailer. And his wife worked at this, this little cafe type place, right? And there was this weird little old lady that used to go there all the time, and because Joseph would have to go pick up his wife, these strange little things, she would ask people, he noticed that she would ask people to give her a ride somewhere, usually like in the middle of nowhere. And Joseph himself had this happen to him a couple times, and when they get to where they're going, she would say, here's this meditation that she wanted them to do, and she just thought it was a weird little quirk and would go along with it. And she started to do this with all these people, and of course all this fucked up shit started happening. And the short version of that ends up being that she was a shape-shifting reptilian, right? So moving on to part 2, Joseph had actually moved, and he was staying in a basically squished between a 3 apartment strip, right? And it was like a garage type apartment where him and his wife were sleeping. And the little old lady, that Desert Witch, ends up moving in next to him. And then one night, first of all, he's just floored that she's there anyway. Doesn't really know, he knows that she's crazy. He knows what she's about. He's a little bit freaked out just by that notion at all. And then one night, he has this really bizarre dream, and he has this sensation in his head where basically she's connecting to him in a process called cording, where she connects this cord, like if you astrally project from your body, apparently you have this silver cord coming out of your forehead, and it's attached to your physical body. Well, they can attach these, mediums, apparently, really good mediums can attach their cord to a person's cord with permission, generally, and they have permission to go in and see their thoughts and read their mind and try to help them with their problem. Well, she was forcibly doing that while he was sleeping. Now she's his neighbor, And while he's sleeping, he has this sensation in his third eye, and it's pumping, pumping, pumping. And in the blackness, with his eyes closed, he begins to see her visualize, and he's having this, back and forth tug of war mentally. He's praying, trying to kick her out, and she's doing her thing and trying and visualizing more and more until she's gone. He ends up sharing this with his friend, and his friend knows a lot about this stuff, and basically explains to him what this is, how she can come and just find him wherever he is, do any kind of black magic, any kind of ritual. She can kill him. She can do all these different things. And and then he ends up having this remote dream where basically he's watching himself in his room sleep, and he watches the doors to his room open and his window open, and this strange, bizarre creature come in and say this really weird word to him that sounded like it was in double or triple voices in a harmonic, kind of like a musical way. And anyway, it went into his house and opened the window and climbed out of the window. And when he got up, the doors were actually open, the windows actually open, and he was able to see a shadow creature run across his front yard. So that actually happened, right? So that's where we are with the story, to succinct it up. But I mean, there's a quarter left of this, Ryan. So like, should I continue this thing here?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't mind you cluing up. I was kind of hoping that you would scan ahead a little bit while I was jabbering on there.
Yeah, I did actually, and that's the thing. Like, there are bits of this that seems related for sure. There seems like there's parts of it. There's also stuff that isn't, and it's kind of hard to weave in between what is and isn't because it's a wall of text, right?
Yeah, fair enough.
So if you want, I mean, we could leave that there. I mean, there's a part 3 to this, sure. So if you want to do your thing.
Well, what do you think, people? Do you want to hear the rest of?
Am I a guest, Jerry Carter? Am I a guest on the Ryan show? I fucking made this show. This show wouldn't be here without me. So no, it's not the Ryan show. Anyway,
it's the Will and Ryan show.
Yeah.
Oh boy, oh
yeah,
boy.
it ticks me off because all the fucking music, all the artwork, all the fucking website shit, that's all me. I'm not the guy with glasses. I'm Will fucking Pender. Now you can go on with your story.
Well, what I was saying was, I was asking if everybody wanted you to continue on. Let's give chat a second to catch up to the audio, because I know that there is a definite lag there.
There's always a lag.
Oh geez, I got a sentence half typed and the dog hit the enter button on the keyboard. Oh my, oh my. Okay, so you guys can let us know if you want us to continue on with this guy's story. I got a couple of little things that I wanted to talk about that I thought were strange and interesting and weird. Do we want to continue on with the Desert Witch? Is there anything? Is there anything that stuck out to you in the Desert Witch, Will?
Well, there is something here about a portal.
I'm all about portals.
All right, yeah, we got a couple people that want to hear more, so. Yeah, I guess we'll continue. I mean, fuck, if you want to do your bit after this, I'm fine with it.
Okay.
Right? So, all right, let's continue on. Where was I to? Let's see, we're angels. Okay, so he saw the, where were we to? All right, so we were at where the veil is thin, right?
Yes.
Right, okay. So, anyway.
Well, I think we were a little bit, yeah, but go ahead.
Remember he said that like it sounded like a portal would open up on the roof and something would jump out of it, run around, and would jump off or jump into the portal or something, right? So he said, anyway, well, running on the roof continued, and he said that was funny because the landlord's cat started climbing a tree to get on top of the roof, and you would hear whatever it was chase the cats up there, right? But he said, you like to pretend that it was just a cat so he could sleep better at night.
Sure.
Anyway, he said another strange thing happened, that he would start to see these liquid-like lights floating around the air. And he said the only way that he could describe it would be like, the inside of lava, right? He said usually it was a beautiful fluorescent blue color. And he said he would wake up from dead sleep, sometime after midnight, and he would notice this small dot appear in the middle of the room. And he said, this dot would look like this bright blue liquid as it moved through the air like smoke, and it would slowly move its way through the air towards his head, and he'd start to get this cold thumping again on his forehead. So this is his third eye, right?
I used to experience something similar when I was doing a lot of meditation. I could focus for just a few moments, and I could feel like a thumb in the middle of my forehead, massaging my third eye.
Okay. Well, okay, so that's cool to have that kind of like your feedback, seeing as how you've been into this stuff and kind of
Yeah,
bringing it up with Joseph
I,
here.
I can say that the way he's describing it is pretty legitimate.
Okay, cool. All right, so when this would happen, he'd start yelling no or stop. Usually when this feeling started to get right in front of his face. And then that's when it would either collapse into itself or it would snake backwards all the way up, towards where it came to be to this exact point, like someone was sucking it up with a vacuum or something, right? And he said, like, this would repeat from where, it had started, the first time, a few feet closer, would, he'd go all night. And once it started, he would get up and he'd pray. He'd get his wife up and she would pray. They'd do this prayer. And he said it was exhausting, but at the same time, it was amazing to watch this very bizarre anomaly, right? And anyway, he was curious as to what would happen if it ever reached him, but he wasn't brave enough to let that happen. So he said another thing that would happen would be this spiral shape that it usually illuminated blue. It would start out as a dot, then grow to the size of maybe a soft ball, and then float over him or go past him and through the glass door and into the backyard. And sometimes it would show up as a geometric shape, like something you'd see on a Sacred Geometry t-shirt or something. And honestly, it just really made no sense to him. He said what was weird is once it showed up, if he closes his eyes, he'd still see them just the same as if his eyes were still open. And he said that really bothered him. It felt invasive. And he wondered whatever that little lady did while trying to cord with him, if it left something open in him, like it scared his third eye or opened him up to see spiritual things or something of that nature. And he said it never seemed to have a point or reason for these lights. There was never, like, he couldn't see why it was happening. And the only thing that really got annoying about it was that, they would slither towards his forehead and cause it to pulsate. So, the sensation of that really annoyed him. And he said these were the colors that he saw. It was usually blue. He said it didn't feel bad, but, once an orange one showed up, he was looking at the orange light on his MP3 player, and the light started to drip out of the speaker box and float towards him. So that's fucking weird, right? He said he actually screamed at this time because he had the sensation that it was evil and that, it carried this really, really big sense of dread with him or with it. And he said he couldn't explain it. He woke his wife up, and first, he whispered, please, no, and then he yelled no. And he said that time it disappeared and it didn't come back, and he never saw that color again. But he said his wife never saw the light, but she felt things when they were around. Like, it wouldn't matter if he told her he was seeing something, she'd suddenly say that they need to pray, or they just needed to light up a sage bundle and smudge the house. So she said that, she never wanted to see anything, but she admitted to seeing shadows, flashes of lights or orbs zing by the corner of her eye. but that was it. It's that elusive, peripheral vision kind of scenario. And, apparently his wife had witnessed a few UFOs, and basically was like, that was, she experienced that, and she was freaked out by it. And she basically told him that she thought it was a blessing not to see the stuff. And Joseph starts seeing that it was bad enough to feel its presence for her, right? She just wasn't into this kind of thing. And he said other lights that he saw, and still see, are these violet blobs, like, a chunk of smoke stuck in the air. He said they move really slow. They are dull, bright green ones too. And at first he thought that, the violet colored ones were good. Some new age person told him the chakra color meant that this and that, and you could use it to protect your aura. But the green ones always show up right after, or attached to the violet ones, and they don't feel good. They actually give him a pain in his forehead instead of the cold thumping, that dull pain that he sometimes gets. So he said you can kind of imagine the way he's feeling, the fact that he feels like he's losing his mind by this point. He's worried that he cracked, that he's gone completely cookies, right? And he said his wife kept assuring him that he wasn't losing it, and the creature next door was doing these things, the lizard lady. And he said every time his wife went to open the cafe around 5:30 a.m., she'd have to pray and smudge the place, or else she'd have a really shitty day at work. And even though that the old lady wasn't coming in, it was like she left some kind of residue behind. Something in that place, something of her was there, causing this, this real shitty, bad atmosphere. And he said the owners ended up having 3 psychics come in to cleanse the place of all the dark energy. And you know how it is. Like, everybody don't believe in that shit. But what you'll often see, like, for business owners, at some point when no one can explain this, man, they go to those. It's like, it's a last resort. It's like, well, fuck what anyone thinks of me, man. I'm getting these psychics in. If that's what it takes to get this out of my business, then I'll do it. So that's what they did. They had these psychics come in to rid the restaurant of these dark energies. And he said all 3 psychics said that there was a portal that let dark things into the cafe, and it was causing all kinds of problems. And guess where they said that the portal was, and it was right above where that little lizard lady used to sit every day at the cafe. And he said it took 3 cleansings from those mediums to close the portal. And said then things started to get better at the cafe. He said the energy changed. It was brighter. It wasn't as negative. People were nicer. And he said every now and then you'd have, some kind of funk show up. But then, him and his wife would pray, and then it wouldn't return for months. Reminded him of this old verse. Once a house is cleaned of an evil spirit, it'll go on a fro looking for rest. And when it finds none, it'll return with 7 other spirits stronger than itself and try to occupy the house again. And the old verse started to take on a new meaning in Joseph's life because things were about to get a lot worse for him. So the portal thing got him thinking, that little old lady was going all over the place and probably opening portals for only God knows what. And he started to think that she opened a portal at his place. And that's what was going on. All the strange shit that was happening to him, maybe she opened a portal. He said
that could explain all the myriad of activity.
Oh, yeah. Well, how things even got in over there, right? So he said, the little shit was spiritually tormenting him. He said he got so worked up thinking about this little demon lady, he was honestly pondering killing her, right? The desert is a big place, and people go missing all the time.
Jesus Christ.
So... I understand it though. But anyway, he said he was kind of at his wit's end. He was sick of all the weird shit going on. He was
stressed right out.
Stressed right out. He was exhausted with all this stuff going on. Exhausted trying to process what was happening. And the only thing that, kept him from, ending her was the idea, of going to prison, looking like a lunatic. Hey, man, me too. Right? But anyway, he said he could see it now. Front page of Phoenix News. Mentally ill gun owner kills harmless old woman thinking that she was an alien witch lizard. It does sound bad, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, he said, yeah, that's just what America needs. So another Fruit Loop with a gun. So he decided that the only way to handle this lady was to spite spiritual with spiritual. And he decided that the only way, uh, that he was going to be able to do this
To
was to
bust out some hardcore Jewish prayers.
Jewish prayers, spirit guns,
Spirit guns.
get fucking
The
Gandalf the
Tobin
wizard.
the Tobin Spirit Guide.
Tobin spirit guide. But what he actually started to do was start to pray and fast, and praying that she would be killed or she would move or something like that, right? Not usually what you pray for, but he just had enough, and he remembered that a teaching in the Talmud. I know that's not how you pronounce it, but anyway, some kind of book spelled.
No, that's right.
That's
the
right.
Talmud.
All right.
Yeah.
And he said in it, there's this teaching that if a thief was found, or a thief found out that it would have to pay back what it had stolen 10 times over. Or wait, no, thief was found out that it would have to pay okay, it doesn't really make sense the way it was written, but he also remembered teaching that said, if a person lays a trap for someone else that they lay themselves, they'd fall into it, or something. It's not the best.
Yeah, it's the old trope when it comes to magic, right? That anything that you cast onto somebody
comes back times
comes
three?
back to you 3 times, right? Like that's what he's saying.
All right.
In various metaphors.
All right. So anyway, Joseph began to pray.
Yeah, there we go. Let's not glaze over that. You pronounce one right.
Okay, let's not glaze over that.
That's very right, Quiet Storm.
Yeah, well, I think I should get some kind of medal. You know.
Well,
Anyway, so Joseph began to pray that that these things, getting rid of these things, and ask the Creator to do what he said in the scriptures. And he also remembered a Native American shaman who was hanging out with some folks, and they saw what they said was a large, ugly bird thing land in a tree on his property, and everybody freaked out because this thing was rather hideous and grotesque. And the only thing,
like a royal reptilian,
like that old lady land in his fucking tree, man, just fucking. But anyway, you keep making me lose my place. Now
I can't help it. The story is too long.
It is too. Okay. Anyway, so the only one who didn't freak out was the shaman, and he walked up and he pointed to the tree with his finger at the creature, said something in Navajo to it, and the bird flew off. And when his guest asked him what he said it was a curse sent here by a witch. He was surprised he had seen it, and when he asked him what it had said, he replied, I told it to go back to the one who sent it, do 100-fold to her what she had commanded it to do to me, or one of you. And he said, within days she'll be dead because she comes to me and asks me to remove the curse. They asked me if he would, and he replied, she has no mercy on others, so none will be given to her. And that story got Joseph thinking. He said, hey, I'm going to do that too, to this lizard lady. So he prayed with the intention that whatever she had done or tried to do to him would happen to her 100-fold. And after that, maybe, he saw her once more. She had this, some young girl with her apparently learning mysteries or something, but that's not the end of the story. But we're getting there, I promise. Anyway, he came home one day, noticed that the door to her apartment was open, and he could hear his landlord and wife talking to, her cat in the old lady's apartment. And he came out and, asked, or she came out, his wife came out and asked Joseph to help her move a sofa that was in the apartment outside. And hesitantly, he agreed. He really didn't want to touch anything in that place after, the demon grandma had been living there. And he helped remove the old couch and in a new one. And most of the, these weird apartments, the garage-size apartments, he said, in Sedona, they were generally fully furnished. You weren't really bringing in and taking out furniture. But she was upgrading the apartment. And, he was happy and hopeful that this meant that the old lady had moved out, right? And he asked his landlord's wife, as he walked around the lady's apartment, if this old lady was moving out. And she said she hadn't received the coming month's rent, and so she put it on Craigslist for rent, and asked if anyone like her that would want to rent it. And at this point, Joseph hadn't seen the old lady in weeks. She had apparently left some stuff in the apartment, almost as if she expected to return, but she didn't. And after being in her apartment, he said that there was no doubt that there was an evil woman who practiced exactly what she claimed to practice. He said on a long table by her bed was laid out a real sacrificial dagger with dried blood on the blade, and he's not talking some cheap $12 witch knife that you buy at a Comic Con or Asian corner store. He said this thing was legit.
Or San Francisco and Corner Brook.
Or yeah, that place. He said this thing was legit. He knows knives. He's an amateur blacksmith, and he forges as a hobby, right? So he knows knives. I'll take his word for it, right? He said this thing looked really old, like 1500s old, right? He said it's all beautifully handmade, had to be worth some serious cash, and did not look cheap at all. He's guessing that it was probably a family heirloom. And he said, like this lady, he got the impression that this lady came from a long line of real deal nasty witches, right? And he said next to that was this abalone shell. It has some ash, some sort of tar. He thinks some kind of herbs and maybe a chicken foot in it. It gave off this really bad stink. And next to that was a communion set you'd find in a Catholic's house with a HIS on an embroidered bag. And in the occult, it stands for Horus, Isis, and Set. And actually, it stands for the same thing in the Catholic Church, but they won't tell you that. They'll spoon feed you some Latin bullshit. I'm not getting into that book of worms, but anyway.
Set being, I believe, one of the cobra-headed gods.
One of the cobra-headed gods. So anyway, next to this shell was a petrified finger. Now, that's something that we've seen in a lot of occult stories. And he said, yep. He said it was a hard as rock severed finger. He said he's looked through many of occult books and black magic books trying to figure this one out, and came up empty. But now he's calling on us and our listeners. I can guarantee you, I don't know, but if anyone knows what someone would keep a severed finger for in a ritual, shout it out in the comments here. It'll be in the video. He said on the table was what he can only describe as a wizard's wand. A large purple and white crystal mounted on its end, wrapped in either sinew from an animal guts or a waxy leathery string. The crystal was mounted in between a large fork and a branch that was used to make the wand. Joseph said he was assuming it was a special type of wood. The 2 points of the fork were sharpened, and he later found out from a white witch that if you fancy yourself a practitioner of the black arts, your wand will have 2 points at the end, signifying your power and devotion are to the Dark Lord. The devil's horns should be your wand. There were a few other things on the table that he doesn't recall off the top of his head, but as he looked around the room, he had noticed she had placed above the opening in the kitchen and above the front door a triangle piece of mirror, each one facing the other, causing the reflection to go on for infinity in both mirrors. Now, I've seen this. It's very cool looking, actually. He said this apparently causes a gate that spirits can travel through or get trapped in, depending on.
I was just going to say, I've heard it referred to as a spirit trap.
Yeah, I thought I've heard that too, right? Because it goes on for infinity, right? And judging by the chaos and the weird shit that was going on in the complex, he was guessing that it was a gate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, but the weirdest thing of all, the strangest thing in the room was at the end of her bed. And at the end of the bed was a piece of poster board on a tripod holder. The kind of thing that you'd see on display at a technology show or during a high school presentation. And he said on it was the double helix strand image of human DNA with an extra helix strand running down the middle. And he said he shits us not. At the top of the chart, read in all caps, how to activate your reptilian DNA. He said he couldn't believe it. It was so cheesy and stupid sounding when he read it. He actually didn't want to include that in the story, right? Because it sounds so dumb. But he said for this...
Well, I got to make a point on that because there is a certain branch of technogenetic research. I don't know what the proper term for it is, but artificial genetic research that is going on currently. where they believe that it's possible to create a third helix of artificial DNA that can reinforce or suppress certain traits that you already have to the point where you may be able to modify an already, like, if I was able to give you a third helix, will, that I could enhance your vestigial tail DNA, and over time you would begin to grow a tail. Where I could enhance your gill DNA, and over time you would grow gills. And this is an actual legitimate brand of research, so that it's not CRISPR. It's not CRISPR. CRISPR is a permanent change to your DNA, but adding a third helix would be totally uh, um, totally different, because it's something that you can remove or modify later down the road, right? Technogenetic or synthetic genetic, genetosynthetic. I'm not sure. Um, but yeah, it's an idea of an artificial third helix to to your DNA, where you could pretty much fucking change an already grown living being into something else, but maybe not permanently. That if you got sick of having horns and wings and gills and a tail and all that shit, be like, you know what, I'm over that. I'm gonna go back to being normal now.
Okay. All right. You're done, right? No, I was
uh,
wondering. I kind of trailed into the last of it. I thought you were telling me that you're going to be normal now.
no, that's never gonna happen.
Okay. So so anyway, we're good. I'm going to continue on with this part, right? We're good?
Yeah, go,
Okay.
go.
All right. So anyway, as he said, it sounded, fucked up to even mention it, right? Because it sounds cheesy, right? He didn't even want to include it. But I guess for the sake of telling the entire truth of the story, this is what he saw. And he said, he said it's a fucking chart. He said he asked his landlord what was up with, all this crazy shit there. And he said she was like, I don't know. I hope she comes back to get it. Otherwise, by law, I have to hold on to it for a year or something. She teaches some classes, she thinks, or something, some kind of mystery school stuff. And, that's what she assumed that this stuff was. And, she's always got some young woman over here that she's talking to. I guess remember earlier she said she had like this young girl that she was bringing around and telling the, teaching magic or whatever, right? So that's what she figured it was. And
An apprentice.
right, the apprentice. And anyway, she said she always got this young woman coming over here. She says people come from all over to learn from her, right? She said, did you see the car with the Illinois plates? That was one of her students, drove all the way here from Illinois. And she tried to, get him and her into it, the landlord or the landlord's wife, but she wasn't interested. She has enough to do. And anyway, he said he never saw the lady again. He assumes that the prayer worked, and they ended up moving back to the Washington state. And the desert is beautiful, but it doesn't have the ocean or snow-capped mountains that blah 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 where he's to now. So anyway, he said honestly he feels that this brush that he's had with evil has brought him closer to God, and now life is good. Now that is this entire part 2. But
Jesus Christ, there's a part 3.
There's a part 3, but we're not going to do it tonight.
Jehovah save us.
Well, I mean, one part
Shalom,
I appreciate.
Lahoyim, Menorah. That's all the Jewish words I know.
I actually appreciate the long stories because they're in depth, they're long, blah blah blah. Normally, I would have went in and edited that, but I just don't have time to do that shit anymore. So that's
No, that's fine. Fuck it. We'll do it live.
fuck it. We'll do it live, just like that guy that had that mental breakdown on the, you know. So Ryan, you got stories to tell, right?
Ryan, you got stories to tell. Well, I mean, I think we should probably discuss what we just talked about a little bit for a moment, at least.
All right. Well,
So, I mean, I this story covers such a wide range of stuff, right? Sedona is one of these places that you hear fucking pop up all the time, right? It it's one of these weird I don't know what to call it, well or vortex that all this crazy shit seems to fall into. And every time I've heard somebody describe Sedona, it's the same stuff, you know, weird hipster, fucking hippie, gypsy witches and warlocks and wizards and kings and queens in my closet. You know, if anybody gets the reference, great.
I get it. It was the
But
story we did. Go on.
yeah, it illustrates, yeah, exactly, Midwestern, a paranormal hub, right? It illustrates again the kind of weirdness of these areas. And if you remember, a lot of what he touched on was all this Native American lore and sacred land, right? And I think it really it really comes out when somebody tells a story like this, just why a place like Sedona may have been considered sacred land, right? It's literally, the place itself is like taking a fucking psychedelic, right? Um, what are you chuckling at? Hippies. Ryan gets triggered. So, you know, there's so many different angles to take at a story like this. Of course, very early on in the narrative, it was linked to reptilians. Now, are we talking about actual reptilian extraterrestrials, or are these three crones simply channeling some sort of magic slash, you know, quantum science to allow them to transcend the physical form and move on, or the human physical form, and enter different states, different stages.
So are you
Change.
referring to what she was, you know, the process she was going through with the triple helix thing?
Well, that's what I mean, right? Like, all of the story, for the most part, from this guy's perspective, right? He's telling it from a very paranormal and very, you know, magical point of view. But certain things, oh, what happened here?
Are you seeing the black comment?
Blocked by channel blacklist. Yeah, I just seen that pop up.
But do you see what it says, or is that just me?
The David Pallades really is a total asshole.
It was like so out of left field, but it was from our last.
I know what it's from. Rock and roll, Sly Tiger. So, so I kind of derailed myself there. So, you know, there's talk about holographic skin suits, right? Omar, holographic skin suits. But here we see an example of a real theoretical technology, right? Where we're talking about the possibility of creating a third helix in the human DNA strand, right? Now, that something like that, and you can go and look this up, right? I've done extensive reading on it. I love genetic research. I love the idea of changing the human form, of taking the element of nature away from human evolution and taking control of it. I love that, right? Now, what happens if a very small part of society gains access to that kind of technology, right?
Depends on what kind of people they are.
There's that quote, right, that any sufficiently advanced technology will appear as if magic to a less advanced culture, or something like that. I'm paraphrasing. Um, and I think that, in my opinion, I think that's what's happening here. That we have an individual who's very rooted in a spiritual world. I'm not saying that there isn't a spiritual world. I'm just saying that this guy is really rooted in a spiritual world. Fuck, watching myself on video, I look like a fucking Italian waving my hands around when I'm talking.
I just find you look red.
Well, that's because it's warm in here and I'm drinking.
You
I
could
got
use the name
I
Big
got
Red, Big Chief Red.
big cheap red. That's cultural appropriation. Um,
His words are too big. Anyway,
I, 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 I think like, at least from my perspective, is that I'm hearing a story being told to me by somebody who has a very extreme spiritual perspective on a situation that may, in fact, have a very advanced technological aspect as well, right? That we're dealing with an area that is, synonymous with extraterrestrial activity, extra dimensional activity, whatever. The Red Priest of Thoros Mir. Oh, Christ. I'm not burning anybody alive to see the future.
oh
Uh,
man.
I'd have to really not like you to burn you alive.
But if he was
um,
really hungry,
I was really hungry. Yeah, I'm not a little guy. So tell me, like, what's your sense of the story that we're getting? Because, like, for me, it's like brain interfacing and possible genetic manipulation.
yeah. See, like, okay, the thing that immediately comes to mind right from the beginning is that it is black magic of some sort, or some kind of ritualistic thing. You got three cronies. I mean, let's not forget. I mean, it's kind of centered on, the lizard lady, right?
Yeah.
But we have two others, and we know that they're part of a coven, and we know that that they kind of worked the whole, like, there's three cities, I believe, that they had they had a tight knit kind of thing. Like, they were going to random people's yards and doing shit. Like, I don't know why. Is it just to be a nuisance or be an asshole, or is it for some other reason, right? But
Well, what was the term he used? Spiritual circuit. I like that. I really like that.
yeah, it was like, well, good point, right? So, like, they had this locked down, but why? Like, I mean, you think about it. If you had the power to do that, forget the fact that you don't. Like, let's say you and I had the power. Does this come back to the point? It's like, well, why do some people do bad things? And it's like, well, some people just like to watch the world burn, right? Is that what this is, or is this in order to do your rituals and get more powerful, you have to do things like this? Like, I believe to become a skinwalker, the final step, part of the rituals, you have to kill a best friend or something like that, right?
Best friend, family member, loved one. But I mean, like that illustrates a certain commitment to the attainment of power, I think. Right? Like, if there are beings that hold this power onto themselves and are the custodians of said power, and they don't want some fucking goody two shoes motherfucker rolling up and snatching some of that power too, right? I can certainly see a situation where, well, if you want to be the on the inner circle of the upper echelons of the Illuminati government, then you need to go into this room and have sex with a bunch of children while we film it, so we have something to use against you if you ever betray us. Right? Now, I'm not saying that's what happens, but I'm just saying that that's a possible situation, I guess.
Is it?
And in this case, this is kind of the spiritual equivalent we're talking about. You want this kind of power? All right, you can have that kind of
Well,
power.
there's an
But you got to
interesting
do something real fucking bad to damn yourself forever.
Pandora Quinn in the comments there said her uncle was a skinwalker.
Yeah, I seen her make that comment earlier. I forgot about it until just now, but
If you want to throw that,
that's crazy.
if you want to throw some of the detail there in the chat, Pandora, I'll certainly read it out. There's this.
So you think this is a more metaphysical phenomenon than a
Well,
quantum and advanced technological one?
I would have been completely had it not been for the thing that he found in the apartment later with the triple helix thing, and the. But then again, I don't know if maybe she was always reptilian. I mean, the way that the story reads from part one was that she was a reptilian from the beginning, at least in his story, right? I don't know if maybe she would have that up there to show to her her
Her
people,
apprentice.
her apprentices. So I don't know if that is a part of it, right? But like my understanding, especially out there, I mean, you have the skinwalkers. I mean, I believe at the end of part one, I mean, that was somewhere we came back with. It wasn't that it was a reptilian. It was that it was a skinwalker. She was a shapeshifter.
Yeah.
Right?
The serpent was just one of the forms that she chose to adopt because she knew that he was so in touch with Hebrewism and Christianity.
Yes, why? You see what Pandora said there, Love? She said her aunt experienced it from him. That he would form into a dog, and he'd come back at night, turn back into a human in his room, and that was back in the 80s. Just to put up there, Pandora, if you wanted to send me like a really detailed account of that, if you got a nice bit there, I'll definitely put it into one of these live shows for sure. And you can go to the official website for that. But Ryan, I don't know exactly where I am with it, but I get the impression that she was. I don't think that she like turned into a reptilian. Like I don't think that she like did rituals and stuff like that to turn into one. I think that maybe she was one and was teaching it, right? And maybe that's what those things were. Thank you, Pandora, and I will definitely put that into a show once we get it. And speaking of submissions and stuff like that, we get a nice bit now, especially since we're covering these things live. But we burned except for this one. I mean, this one was a long one, right? Generally, we're burning through like 3 and 4 an episode. So now is the time. If you have a story and you ever want to share it, man, there's a really good chance we're gonna get that in the show. And furthermore, again, if you just spread this stuff on your forums, on your Facebook, whatever, because every 100 to 1,000 people that sees it, they got a story, and then they share it, and then we tell you the story. That's just the way it goes. So just try to keep the engine running. We just need to have enough people see it, because something that I think Ryan and I should touch on just a little bit for everybody else out there. I've actually had a couple of our regular fans tell me this, that they've been automatically unsubscribed from us, and they miss our live show because they didn't realize they were unsubscribed. There is a pile of weird shit going on with YouTube lately,
especially on the back end of the shit that you don't see, all the deep algorithms and programming in YouTube.
Yeah, like for example, just so everybody knows, I think I mentioned this before. There's a ton of comments I didn't reply to, and it's not me being rude, because I generally try to respond to everybody, but I can't. If I go on any video that's older than a couple weeks, I can't reply to it. It comes up, comment failed to post, comment failed to post. I've been in touch with the the YouTube team. They've been looking into it. They can't fix it. I also have all kinds of issues with shit like that, stuff not showing up where it's supposed to show up. Our one thing you may have noticed, besides people just automatically getting unsubscribed. Yes, that's exactly, Hunter. Even PewDiePie is bitching because everybody, every fucking buddy, even the biggest YouTubers are losing not just money, but like subscribers and shit. Like a lot, like people are at the mercy of the recommendations, like YouTube recommends, or like when you're watching a video, the videos that comes up, the suggestion videos. Like, man, thousands of views come from there. You're at the mercy of it. And in the last couple months, we have totally, like, our views have been halved. Our money has been down to a quarter of what we had. Like, everything has just gone down. And, like, money and views, like, whatever. But the one thing that is true for our show and always has been that we kind of rely on is stories from people. And
The
for
submissions.
the submissions. And for us to
Yeah.
get stories from people, we need people to see it. So, like, halving our views really fucks that up. So, if you guys could help out just by, put it on your blogs, on your Facebook, on your whatever, just so that we can get more people watching it and more stories coming in so we don't burn through them too quick, right? But, there's a big thing. Ryan and I even talked about switching platforms, like going over to, what's it called, Twitch, right? And it's still something that we're considering doing in conjunction with YouTube, so that if this pillar ever falls, we got somewhere else to, we're
Because
not.
honestly, who knows what's going to happen with the YouTube platform? But anyway, I think you know maybe we'll discuss more of that at a later date. Um, did you want to? I was going to touch on a few little things. Did you want to do that and kind
Yeah,
of clue up?
yeah, for sure. You touched on that. I gotta check
Um,
one thing. You go on.
okay, go ahead. So recently, and I don't know like the 100% validity of this. I've gone and done some digging around and looking over the last couple of days, but I came across something a few days ago that really surprised the hell out of me. I heard about Buzz Aldrin, you know, one of the first people to be on the moon, um, getting airlifted out of Antarctica. So this shined the light on something that I wasn't aware of. That apparently, around 30 years ago, every major, minor country on the planet came together and actually made an agreement that nobody would ever claim Antarctica, the continent of Antarctica. Um, and the only people allowed there would be researchers and scientists and very essential personnel. Now, that was like a 30-year-old treaty that just ran out, apparently, right? And like right away, Buzz Aldrin hops on a plane and flies out to, I don't know, it was a Dutch or Norwegian or UK research base. So I found out about this because he got airlifted out, and then I did some reading and found some strange stuff. And around the same time as he was getting airlifted out, the United States of America's, and I think without any argument, we could say, especially because Hillary and Obama, Hillary's out and Obama's on his way out, that John Kerry right now represents the United States of America's most influential diplomat. He was involved in negotiations with Russia and all kinds of stuff. He, around the same time, goes down to Antarctica as well. Now, the reason put forth was that he was trying to learn more about the realities of climate change. I don't know if I would agree with that position. If you're going to take your most influential and powerful diplomat of arguably or inarguably the most powerful country on the planet and send him to the most dangerous, remotest environment on this world. I just, that seems odd to me. So aside from that, a few days later, this, with all this weirdness where, here I am just tapping my lip, thinking, pondering, I see that apparently, and I can't verify this. Now, I've seen people say that this is bullshit, and I've seen people say that they've seen the tweet themselves. That there was a tweet from Buzz Aldrin um, that showed a picture of what looked like a snow-covered pyramid, which is very similar to a structure that is very near to this research base that he was at. And all it was a picture of this structure that looks like a pyramid. And he wrote, um, "We are all in danger, or we are all in great danger. It is evil itself." And that was it. Now, apparently, the tweet was eventually removed, the image was removed, and now there's a big movement to say that that was all a hoax and blah, 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 blah. Um, I myself find it very intriguing. I find Antarctica to be an extremely intriguing continent. There's a whole thing called the Prairie Raise Map that's from like the, I don't know, the 13 or 1500s or some fucking thing, that seems to show the Antarctic coastline. Now, the Antarctic coastline, yeah, and if you just search Buzz Aldrin um, and that quote, or just Buzz Aldrin tweet, then you'll find what I'm talking about. So, what was I saying there? I kind of interrupted myself. Um, the Prairie Raised map seems to show the coastline, the actual coastline of Antarctica, not the ice that we see today or that we saw 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 years ago. Um, the actual coastline that we can only see with um, ground penetrating radar that can see through the ice kind of thing. So the Prairie Raised map has been verified, I believe, by the Navy, who compared it to their actual ground penetrating radar images of the coast, the actual physical coastline of Antarctica, and have shown. So there's this idea that there is a landmass underneath Antarctica. Um, there's a whole continent, and there are theories that there could be an entire lost civilization. Some extreme theories say that that lost civilization may not be human. So that's one thing I want to throw out at you. Um, I, maybe that's enough. Did you want to go into the whole Lake Vostok thing tonight?
Uh, I don't know if we got that. We're at 2 hours here now, and I gotta get
Yeah,
up
we're
for.
we're at 2 hours now. I just wanted to touch on the whole Atlantis thing. I don't know. Were there any comments while I was yammering on there that we should touch on?
Just let me check. There were comments. I know that I lost my window. Is what happened. Hang on.
Ah, I see.
Um,
Um,
yeah. So like, there's some people. There were some comments here referencing different things that you were talking about there, right? But just take a quick little, gloss back over and see if there's anything you want to touch on. Because I don't, like, I'm not up on what you're talking about specifically. The last thing I looked at, I already told you about, was the Chinese astronaut that was hearing something
yes.
knocking on his, well, it didn't sound like the inside or the outside of the ship. It was really bizarre, especially since
Yeah.
his, you
But
know,
that's been chalked up to thermal expansion and contraction because of something that the different astronauts from the Chinese space program have noticed. And so far, they've all used the same. Well, it's not the same generation, but I think it's called the Shenzhou module, and it's all variations on the Shenzhou. Um, so there's possibly something with that model of spacecraft that is expanding and contracting in the extreme environment of space that's causing the banging.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, you told me that. So, but I did come across something about a U.S. team that had heard music in space, and it makes sense to say that it was radio interference because sound can't propagate in space without air. But
Yeah, the only place that's really devoid of our radio signals from Earth in the whole fucking solar system really is actually on the dark side of the moon.
or Pink Floyd, yeah,
And
cool.
Pink Floyd wrote that amazing album.
That is cool. All right, so if you have nothing else on that, like because we got other stuff, I will throw this to the audience because this is what I was checking on, Ryan, and we haven't discussed it, but Christmas is like really close, and
Yes, I seen that comment. What's Monday? What's next Monday?
next Monday, what the show is?
Next Monday
It's
is
the
the 19th.
19th.
Somebody asked if we'd be doing a show next Monday.
I'd
I
be up.
think I think so.
I'd be up for the 19th, not the 26th though.
Not the 26th. No, I don't think so. I think so after the 19th, maybe we'll be coming back in the new year on the 2nd. But now, guys, remember that there's always the opportunity for us to do a show outside of Monday. Like we are very committed to these Monday streams, but Will's a new dad. I just got a new puppy. We both work.
We're both new
There's a lot of
dads.
we're both new dads. I wish I could. You want to see Ryan drunk? I'm drunk
Well,
right now.
you want to see Ryan drunk? It takes a lot of fucking booze.
It takes a lot of booze.
Yeah, he drank all my rum, and it was like nothing. Like it came over, it's like most people they pour a drink or two, and Ryan just like, yeah, just fucking pour it out straight, and just took it like a glass of Coke, drank that, got his brother to pick up more, and that was after he drank all his vodka. The man is a
And
beast.
that was when the liquor store was closed, and so by picking up more liquor, I went to my dad's house and raided his liquor cabinet because he was out of town.
That was a good night. Was that the night we drank in the hot tub?
Yeah, that was a real busy night.
That was a
'Cause we
busy
went
night.
to the hospital and then we got plastered in the hot tub. How about an NDE special where Ryan broadcasts live from the K-hole? What's
K-hole.
the K-hole?
The K-hole. I think I know something about this. He actually messaged me this on Twitter, but he brought this up like a year or more ago when we were doing the near-death experience episodes. And
Oh,
K-hole.
look, everybody. There's my little brother, Evan Sharp. Hey, bro.
Hey, Evan.
Sorry.
But the K-hole is like I believe is a drug-induced thing that's similar to a near-death experience or something like that.
Oh, so is that like the ketamine hole?
Yeah, I think that's what it is actually.
Oh, fuck. Yeah, there's lots of ketamine going on up here.
So he's asking if you'll do it on the show. Of course not.
Yeah, fuck. What are you crazy? I'm not doing fucking ketamine. Fuck that.
But that fucking crocodile drug, what is it called?
That's exactly what it's called, crocodile or something.
Crocodile. Yeah, he'll do that. No, I was joking. But anyway, what I was going to throw out there for everybody is if you have an idea for a Christmas special that you think you'd like us to cover, because like I'm not saying we're definitely going to do like a research one. I mean, we might just grab user submitted ones anyway, but we tend like on occasions we tend to like to do something a little thematic. Like last year we did what was it? Was that the one where we did the fucking what was his name? The guy Jesus cursed that couldn't die. The Wandering Jew.
Oh, the Wandering Jew. That was a great story. I really like that. See, that's one of the weird things is that I'm the furthest thing from a religious guy, but I love all these old stories. If any of you ever have the opportunity, read is it called the Lost Book of Enoch or the Book of Enoch? Read the Book of Enoch. he's like the grandfather of Noah, right? So he's one of these motherfuckers that lived for 200 years or whatever, right? Ketamine is a veterinarian drug. Yes, it's a horse tranquilizer, and it will fuck your ass up. Um, shout out to my buddy Sean, who's watching the show right now, who's text messaging me about the finer points of ketamine. Um, not the finer points as to the accurate points of ketamine. Very knowledgeable guy, Sean. Had a great night at his party the other night. Got real fucked up, and I don't remember the last bit of the night. Like LSD or shrooms. Um, no, LSD and shrooms are a little different. They're nothing like a tranquilizer. They're psychedelics, and they're a different realm all to their own. If you're going to do them, there's rules to follow, set and setting. Yeah, Enoch never died. That is correct. Enoch never died. I believe he ascended twice to heaven. He ascended to heaven once. The angels showed him the heavens, and he came back to earth, done some shit, and then he ascended to heaven again. Set up a cam and ambush Santa. This is the closest thing you're getting to Santa tonight. Sorry.
So I guess to get back on the topic of a Christmas episode, one thing that we always bring up is Krampus. Well, Ryan mentioned it to me years ago, and like every year it's like Krampus. It's like we got nothing else. It's like, what are we gonna do for Christmas? Krampus.
We do a story on the Grinch.
Basically, if anybody has, a cool paranormal something around Christmas, would you'd like us to cover it, email that in as soon as possible, because we gotta go look it up and figure it out and shit like that, and we'll cover it on the 19th if we get enough. Hang on here, Ryan.
Zezobel, yes, DMT, dimethyltryptamine. That is the spirit molecule. If you can get your hands on it, and you got an hour to kill, go to town. What did Terence McKenna call them? He met a whole race of creatures that he called the machine elves. So if that's your thing, rock and roll. Go get yourself some dimethyltryptamine.
Yeah, I'm thinking more of a pizza at this point, but
I already got leftover pizza, so the only thing left to get tonight is DMT.
Leftover sucks, but I do need to get some Christmas rum, because I'm all out of rum.
Might I suggest some Crown Royal apple whiskey?
Is that the brand?
Crown Royal apple whiskey. Just do yourself the favor, pull the trigger on it, grab yourself a bottle, and enjoy it.
Maybe I will. Maybe I'll get that and the rum.
Sure. I save it for the holidays, so it's important, so it's special. I'll drink all kinds of other things throughout the rest of the year, but
turpentine, Javex,
ketamine, whatever. Terrence talked about tripping and having to talk to his landlord one time. It's hilarious. Yes, he certainly did. Terrence McKenna, if you've never heard of him, is like a personal hero of mine. Crown Royal Apple is good stuff. Fuck yeah, Cindy, you nailed it. It's magical. It's Christmassy for me. It feels Christmassy. Every time I get drunk on Crown Royal Apple whiskey during Christmas in front of a fucking roaring fire, I just say, hey, it's Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, I think I'll get that and some private stock Captain Morgan rum. That's going to be my thing.
Oh, yeah? You're not doing the Kraken anymore?
I like the Kraken, but I do like the private stock Captain Morgan more, I think. I like the Kraken. Like, it tastes good, and I like that it's got a Kraken on it, but
yeah,
I like the sweeter taste of the Captain Morgan.
If that's the case, then you are going to fall in love with the Crown Royal Apple Whiskey.
Okay.
In fact, I may have ruined all other alcohols on you.
Well, I do know you love apples. I remember that time on my phone, just like, what are you doing? I'm pounding back
Oh my!
apples. And you're just fucking.
Pound, pound back a bag of apples.
Like,
My
who
number
does that,
12.
right? Who has a fucking basket of apples? Like, I'm pounding back apples. Well, but, well, that's what.
Is it elven magical? Geez. It depends on what your definition of magical is. I would say definitely if you're interested in alternative states of mind and where you could possibly go, psychonautism, exploring inner space, I would say do some research on Terence McKenna. He was an amazing human being. Um, and he has a lot of information to offer.
Um, I was gonna say something. I was gonna look for. Well, I was gonna say this. We should probably clue up here now.
Yes.
Not just because I gotta work tomorrow, but when we trail off like this. Where was it to? I'm looking for this one fucking comment where this guy like went crazy on us in a recent episode. I was gonna put it all up for everyone to see the kind of shit we gotta deal with. But yeah, that's generally that's what happens.
Oh, that one comment that we got
It's like,
about.
what are you doing? Talk about this. I didn't fucking come here to watch two fucking fucks to fight. He's just like, Jesus, dude. Like, there's something wrong with his medulla oblongata. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the first fucking thing that came to my head. But
I will say that when it comes to these live streams, because there are so many people in chat, I mean, we've had between 30 to 50 people here with us consistently tonight. We do feel somewhat compelled to go off on tangents from time to time because it feels so intimate, right? I mean, I can look through and I see Omar, Spike Hunter, the One Log, Watchmen, Full Life Rebel, Zesoblex.
and it makes it so intimate. We could just
Jerry Carter, Black Snow, right? Well, I mean, it is because I'm reading all these comments. I might not necessarily directly reply to every one because fuck, we'd be here all night.
No, I was just wondering where
here all night.
I was just wondering where your hands were. I went like fucking, on my nipples, right? Intimate.
Oh, I wasn't.
Oh, so intimate.
I was busy reading comments.
Oh, it's
right?
too
And
intimate.
Yeah, exactly. Too intimate. So we the night where the two of us,
you're so red.
I am. I'm very red. I'm gonna change the saturation on my camera for the next time. But this room, it's very fucking warm in here. During the summer, I would record, in my underwear. That's not going to be.
I know, right? How many fucking episodes have I done in my underwear? You're like, you're like fixing your junk, fucking drinking alcohol. It's like,
right. It's fucking 30 or 40
I'll tell you
degrees inside.
This is a fucking illusion. Just look at this shit. I'm in my pajamas, but I'm wearing a shirt because, it's like the illusion, right? I'm actually dressed to be here, but really I'm just fucking lazy in my pajamas. I came not prepared, just fucking grabbed a thing. And hey, that's flying by the seat of our pants. That's what we do.
That's how we do it. Pandora, sorry, no, I will not dance for you. Mary, very welcome for the show. Watchmen, yes, we are crazy.
I know. I'd like to see a dance.
Just self-combustion. I'm fine. I just have my mother's side of the family is all Aboriginal, Native
do the
American.
Zoidberg thing.
So, I get hit with the whole fire water thing to see if I can leave a handprint, Sauron's white handprint on my own forehead.
Then there's the hippies and the mentally handicapped people.
Right?
Oh,
so,
my.
this is going to be the end of most of our streams, where we record right up until we're too drunk to continue.
Hey, I didn't even have a
Uh,
drink. I got no rum left. I'm sad
you didn't even
now.
have it. You didn't even have a drink.
I didn't even have a drink. Of course, when would I have gotten a chance to drink it? I was fucking reading the whole time. That's the one thing. Like when I'm reading, I can't. It just sits there until you start talking. But
Yeah, fair
it's
enough.
gonna be a shorter
Yeah,
one
but
next.
see, I got to sit here and just drink and smoke while you talked for like an hour and a half,
I know it's
right?
really not fair.
So, anyway, thank you everybody for hanging out with us tonight. Um, let's see. I guess we're going to get one more visit by this little beast.
There you go. He's a cutie, Ryan.
Here we go. Here's Ragnarok, Ragnar for short. And he really is a Viking apocalypse.
Apparently,
Oh,
Ryan, if you start twerking, people are out.
oh yeah.
Me too, by the way. If that happens,
I worked all day. I don't have that kind of fucking energy.
yeah, me either. I sat in a
So
desk all day. I still don't have the energy.
yeah, but you have a son. I can lock my new son in a box.
All right, guys. Well, if you got any Christmas ideas that you want us to do for a show for next Monday, um, you know, shoot that off to us. I mean, I'm going to do a little bit of a Google anyway, see if I can find anything. Um, and if not, we'll toss a coin on Krampus or doing some user submissions, I guess. Um,
Oh, White Storm asked a question. He is 3/4. He is a Mastiff pup. He's 3/4 Dog de Bordeaux, which is a French Mastiff, and 1/4 Persa Canario, which is a Canary Island Mastiff. So he is full on Mastiff, but two different breeds, mostly French Mastiff, Dog de Bordeaux.
hey, Ryan,
Thank you.
I don't guess you'd repeat the conversation the one we had the other day with your dog when I called you.
No, no.
That was a funny conversation, but he won't
Um,
share. I can't make him. All right, guys. Thanks for coming out. Thanks to everybody. I don't always get to reply to everybody because the screen goes so fast. I'm constantly reading and shit like that. But thanks to everybody for coming out and sticking around, hanging out with us tonight. And we'll do this again next Monday. We'll have a good show. And yeah, I guess that's all I really have to say. I appreciate it.
Yes, we really do. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Good night to all the effers out there who hung in with us on this fucking 2.5 hour power
The
stream.
spectacle of a show.
Spectacle of a show. There you go.
Good night.
Um, yeah, thank you so much for joining us, sticking with us, and Detlauf. Oh, Ditloff Pass.
Right.
Gotcha. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night,
Thank you so
everyone.
much. Shut her down, bud.
Good night.